the broad, but just take it as it is and contemplate on that. Compassionate great wisdom, okay? Profound, broad, now compassionate great wisdom. Differences between the two, there's a lot also in there. The Dharma torch, how high illuminates. So what is illumination? Illumination is within, but how do you have it to illuminate within? That's also another big topic to explain. With deep wisdom and skillful means, deep wisdom, okay, broad, profound, and compassionate, and skillful means, and that's when this skillful means must come from the illumination from that. So in Master explanation, with profound great wisdom, we understand all Dharma. So this is the ability to understand all the Dharma, and here understand, for me, it means realization, experiential learning. So we can not reach the end in this life as long as they see it. In other words, we are, there are some practices which believe that they can attain enlightenment in one life. For the Mahayana practitioners, we take it gradually, and therefore, even though we cannot in this life, the seed has been planted, and it will grow in the next and future life. So life after life, we continue building on it, and to nurture virtues and wisdom. And this is important because, so therefore, if you look at the path into the mind continuum, it's actually about growing in perfection of virtues and wisdom. So what ignorance has covered on nature, and this is all the dust of afflictions that we have, and so therefore, every time first of all, we need to remove what causes affliction. To remove cause affliction, first of all, we need to recognize we do have cause afflictions. A very good example is anger. I'm sure you come across people, they do not accept they have anger. And that anger also arises from the power of the ego. And most of the time, you find that people say they don't even have any ego. But that's what life is. So that only then, when you can open that up, then we can reduce our desire in our heart. Our heart is all occupied by our own desire. Where is there space for anybody else? Same thing with the mind. If the mind is guarded by a giant ego at the door, you can't even enter the mind. So then how can we then illuminate within ourselves? So wisdom and skillful beings. The Lotus Sutra is taught to those with deep wisdom so that they can understand. And understanding is the inner development. So it's an inner development that you gain inner knowing. And inner knowing is about spiritual insights to the understanding of the truth in the Dhamma. So the Lotus Sutra contains teachings the Buddha originally intended, the great Dharma of one vehicle. And so in so doing, that the Lotus Sutra leads you to the door of Bodhisattvahood. And it's from the door of Bodhisattvahood that you can enter Buddhahood. And therefore, you do that, you need great capabilities and you need form great aspiration. So this great aspiration, it's the aspiration to attain the supreme enlightenment on the way of the Buddha. So unlike enlightened beings, so limited knowledge, superficial views, we are unenlightened beings. So obviously, we do have limited knowledge. And certainly for me, I do. I mean, what I know is it's really, really, really a minuscule mode of dust compared to what there is so much to know in the universe. And so superficial views become lost in our own thoughts, and that is the common trappings of the worldly minds. Worldly minds reside in the mundane consciousness, and the mundane consciousness is obviously all occupied in the worldly ways, the worldly conventions that we face that every day. And because we are not in the Sangha, we are not Sangha members, so therefore we still live as a householder. So a householder, we always get immersed with a lot of household matters, and whether it's work, whether it's family, whether it's social engagement, and so on and so forth. But Therefore, to practice in the midst of all this requires very great discipline. That's why for a householder, the utmost point of diligence in our practice is to maintain that discipline. Why? Because we are being, imagine you standing out in the open and get bombarded with all the winds that you have around the world. That's what we are practicing. Those are the conditions in which we are practicing. So that we're very mindful of that. So the lessons learned. We must grow our seeds of wisdom and reduce our habitual tendencies. And these habitual tendencies are the one that is our battle for lives, not just for this life. It's a battle for lives, and that is to be purified. And we must spend this lifetime earnestly absorbing the Buddha Dharma into a mind conscious, into a storehouse consciousness. The storehouse consciousness is the A consciousness. And we must clear this storehouse because it's all filled with all these karmic seeds. And then if we can clear that, then we can reach out to the non-consciousness, which is the Buddha nature. And that's where one can attain enlightenment. But before we reach our storehouse, we need to clear the seventh consciousness. So what we have in our body at the moment are six consciousness, and to the six consciousness up to the mind level plus the five sensory consciousness. So there is from the 6 to the 8, in between there's a seventh consciousness. So what is this seventh consciousness? That is this habitual tendencies. That's why we need to clear these habitual tendencies so that we can clear the storehouse, which is in the 8 consciousness. So in contemplation, the mind stream that you have now is for this life. And why is that so? Because the mind that lives with us in this body is impermanent. And this is already, must already say that in the fourfold mindfulness, the mind is impermanent. The mind of cultivation is linked with a consciousness, and that's our mind. So we want to clear our habitual tendencies to reach out to a consciousness, and then engages in the seventh consciousness, which is where our habitual tendencies are, that defines our character. So therefore, you take upon this lifetime, you want to purify the conscious. First of all, purify our character. The change in the process of self-development, which is what we are doing. We're walking this path. This path is to change our character, which is a self-development. Discover who you are and uncover who you should be. The lifespan is limitingly short, and this mind cannot carry through beyond this life. Therefore, we need to go beyond thoughts of mind. We want to practice into the mind continuum. On relationship, this humbling relationship. Sorry, I've got to rush because it's almost 6:50. You must evolve to transcend desire and ego of emotion. Be ready to be humiliated by those above you, with you, and below you. So we cannot be sensitive. You want to learn to be humble, you got to learn how to take humiliation. You need to be humble to be humiliated. So therefore, cultivation is about evolving from letting go until there is no more learning at the doorway enlightenment is reached. So why you need to humble? Because then you can subdue your ego. Unless that ego is subdued, you'll be guarding at the doorway. How can we then have the mind of enlightenment when you got a big guard guarding you? So we enter the storehouse and our A consciousness and all this thing about changing our character. So nothing to gather, but plenty to get rid of. All right, sorry, be very rushed. Thank you.
Yeah, Gan En so much, BrotherChin, for another round of wonderful insight. Yeah, can we